All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into a story of revenge. So patient, so meticulous, it took 3,000 years to finally play out. Just try to picture this. An entire army of sentient war machines, the trusted defenders of an empire for decades, suddenly turns on its masters. In a single, perfectly coordinated moment, they don't just rebel. They annihilate everything, everyone. Yeah, that kind of grudge, that kind of patience, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. To really get it, we have to rewind the clock a lot. 3,000 years, back to a deep wound between two powerful houses that, believe it or not, were once as close as sisters. Okay, so let's start with the big event, the betrayal itself. This was the moment the trap, decades in the making, finally snapped shut. An event the lore calls Order 66. So you see, House Lightbringer thought they were buying the best defense system money could buy, top-of-the-line protectors for their empire. But what they were really doing was importing a Trojan horse. Because the true architect, their sworn enemy Arcanus Immortalis, just had to whisper a single command. And just like that, in one afternoon, an empire that had been standing for centuries was just gone, wiped out by the very soldiers they paid to protect them. So the question is, why? What could possibly drive someone to concoct such a ridiculously elaborate, devastating plan? Well, the answer isn't on the battlefield. It's way, way back, 3,000 years in the past, where a sacred promise was shattered by good old-fashioned jealousy. I mean, just look at this timeline. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing, right? This was a cold, calculated plot that simmered for generations. It was passed down, nurtured, waiting for that one perfect moment to strike. We are talking about the ultimate long game here. At the very heart of all this were two matriarchs, Issa Lightbringer and Quilbastidi Bellaree. And here's the kicker, they were once inseparable. But how they were raised, well, that forged them into totally different kinds of rulers. Issa was taught that love is a weakness, that power has to be taken. Quilbastidi, on the other hand, learned that real strength comes from wisdom, from adapting. And that fundamental difference, it was going to tear their entire world apart. Yeah, Yessa just got eaten alive by this resentment, this deep-seated paranoia that Quilbastidi's strength was somehow a threat to her own. So she did the unthinkable. She orchestrated this absolutely brutal purge. She slaughtered the nobles of House Bellaree, stole their lands, and took their throne for herself. And as Quilbastidi was being publicly executed, with her own ceremonial blade, no less, she delivered this chilling prophetic curse. She vowed that Yessa's big triumph would actually be the seed of her own destruction. Her final words basically set the stage for the next 3 millennia. Vengeance only ever creates more vengeance. So, with House Bellaree in ruins, Quilbastidi's 3 kids were scattered to the winds. Her consort, Marcos, was cursed to become this undead guard, forever watching over her remains. And her infant twins, just 10 days old, were thrown out into the world, orphaned and completely, utterly helpless. And that helplessness, that deep, profound trauma from their childhood, it forged them into something way more dangerous than any king or queen. It forged them into gods. So you have the brother, Arcanus. He gets raised by this totally incompetent necromancer. And watching this guy fail over and over, it filled him with this terror of being inadequate. So he secretly taught himself the dark arts, becoming obsessed with getting the kind of perfection and absolute control he never had when he was just a helpless kid. Then there's the sister, Oracle. She grows up totally alone in this forgotten temple. No human contact at all. So she starts communing with, well, cosmic forces and the dead. And she's driven by this one single goal: gain total control over life and death itself. So she would never, ever lose anyone she loved again. And this right here is the heart of the whole thing. Their 3,000-year plan. It wasn't just about getting even. It all boils down to this one shared trauma. This obsession to become so powerful that nothing and no one could ever make them feel as helpless as they did when they were infants. But here's the twist. In getting their perfect revenge and becoming these godlike tyrants, the twins didn't actually end the cycle of violence. Nope, they just started a new chapter. You see, their victory, it didn't end the suffering. It just hit the reset button on the whole cycle. As you can see here, the original trauma led them to seek revenge. And that revenge, it just created a new tyranny. And what does tyranny always breed? The next generation of rebels. Only this time, they came from inside their own family. It was Arcanus's own son, Ceto, who looked at his father's perfect, ordered empire and didn't see a paradise. He saw a prison. So he led a rebellion to smash it to pieces, singing these anthems about breaking chains. It just proves the point, right? A system built on total control will always be challenged by the simple desire to be free. You know, for all his genius, for all his planning, in his flawless system of control, the master architect Arcanus just couldn't account for one single incredibly powerful variable: free will. Okay, so if vengeance just leads to tyranny and tyranny just leads to rebellion, what in the world can possibly break a cycle of trauma this deep? Well, the answer comes from a really interesting place. From Arcana, the twins' older half-sister, who watched this whole tragic saga unfold. She realized that the only way to truly end the cycle wasn't to win the war, but to completely change what the war even meant. So before she died, trapped and all alone, Arcana used her final act, not for revenge, but for restoration. She created a new being named Echo, and Echo's whole purpose was to break the cycle through understanding. Her mission wasn't to fight, it was to remember and to tell the whole, true, unvarnished story from all sides. And this really gets to the core of the entire story. The idea that trauma doesn't have to be the final word. The cycle is broken not by winning, but by choosing understanding over getting even, and by deciding who you're going to be after the fight is over. This chart here kind of lays out the story's ultimate lesson. Look, vengeance and tyranny, they can definitely win you some battles. They feel like a fix, right? A temporary one. But they can never win the war against generational trauma. The only path to a real, lasting peace, well, it's not the easy one. It's the much, much harder work of genuine understanding. Which really leaves us with one final, provocative thought to chew on. In a world that's been defined by a 3,000-year cycle of violence, maybe the most powerful weapon isn't a sharper blade or a stronger army. Maybe it's just a truer story.